All right, welcome. Welcome to the 11 o'clock panel and the best event for today. My name is Shannon Katari, and I'm with Maestro Digital Mine. We are honored to host this dynamic and tremendous amount of leadership today here. Maestro Digital Mine happens to be one of those great companies that knows how to manufacture IoT devices for the digital mine. So both measurement and control instrumentation that ultimately helps mine ventilation and underground digital communication to the working face. In order for us to do our job best, we need to ask the people who need technologies. All innovators need to go back and ask the very people we're supposed to help for their advice and wisdom. Today we're about to do that. How do we do that? By bringing in the best people in the world to do that and having one hell of a moderator. It is with great pleasure that I introduce a fan favorite and anybody who loves CBC, Mr. Bob McDonald. And he has been communicating science internationally through television, radio, print, live for more than 40 years. And I mean, like, you know, he is incredible and like Mr. Dress-Up level, right?
It's quite an honor.
So, of course, his current gig is that he is the host of CBC Radio's Quirks and Quarks, and it makes sense that this award-winning program help us start this award-winning conference at this award-winning event. So please, by all means, give a round of applause to Bob McDonald.
Thank you very much, Shannon. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this. I've actually been down in a number of mines across Canada over the years, gold mines, been in open pit iron mines, but I have to tell you, the most unusual experience I had going down in a mine was going down to the Sudbury Neutrino Observatory in the Crichton mine there, 5,500 feet down, I think. And I went down the first time with Art McDonald, Dr. Art McDonald from Queen's University, who was the director. And he's since won the Nobel Prize for his work there. So I had no idea what to expect. And we put on the full mining gear with the hat and the light. We get into the cage. We do an express run down. We walk across the drift. The walls are warm. The floor is wet. You can hear machinery in the distance. It's really great. I'm in this mine. Then we come to a door. We go through the door, and it's all white, totally clean. And Art starts taking off his gear. Okay, taking off my gear. And then we go into another room, and he starts taking off his clothes. I said, Art, what are you doing? He said, we have to take a shower. Really? Yeah, come on. So we take off all our clothes, all of our clothes. So here I am talking neutrinos, the sun, Sudbury Observatory. I said, Art, you're the first scientist I've ever taken a shower with while talking science. But it's an amazing place. So I really respect what you folks do. I've been down and dirty there with you, and it's really incredible. So today we're going to talk about going digital, why and what it means, and some of the examples. And our panel today, there's a program that has their affiliations with it, but we have Theo Yameogo from Dundee Precious Metals, Burgess, and he's from Yamana Gold, and Michel Samovojski from Goldcorp, and we have Ethan Hall, TECHrep Global. And so what I'm going to do, we're just going to have a little chat here first, and then we're going to open it up to you. If you have questions for the panel, that'll be the second half of all of this. So first of all, I just want to start with a general question, and Ethan actually volunteered to take the first general question, which is, why go digital? Mining's been around a long time. It's got a lot of traditions to it. Why do you need to go digital? So Ethan, what's your answer to that?
Wow, holy crap, I am so loud.
Shout it out.
The biggest piece, I'm literally whispering right now. Coming from Barrick, I was the IT manager for Barrick for North America, and then also for digital for Barrick, and then have started my own company since. The biggest thing is data. Data is the gold of the future, and we have to have as much as we can, as real time as we can, to make real-time fast decisions. And mining historically has been the laggard in that. And so we need to digitize in order to get some meaningful data it's going to help us increase safety and production.
Anybody else want to comment on that, or why you went digital?
And if I can comment on this one, if you buy a new piece of equipment now, they produce a lot of data, as you just mentioned, for sure. And with data, we are able to measure performance. And if we're able to measure performance, we are able to increase also performance. But the thing also that I have in mind is we will need to have a good strategy on how we will manage these data, because in the next few years, we'll have so much data that we will need to take care of it.
Anyone else?
I'll add a comment. We do. I agree with the other two panelists. However, I just see digitization or digital as a tool, right? So the ultimate, to answer your question, ultimately, it's to create value, right? Is this going to make us more profitable? Yes or no? I mean, yes, we've got the health and safety stuff and CSR and so forth, but bottom line, is this going to make us more profitable?
Well, let's get down to some real examples. Theo, can you tell us about some of the actual examples of digitization in your industry?
Yeah, so at Dundee, we look at digital as more of a opposite of obsolete. So for us, digital is really the signs of the time. It's really how do we stay relevant in today's world. So for example, there's no reason why we should have paper reports that people spend 2-3 days doing, or why we should wait until the end of the month to know what's happened at the mine. So we put Wi-Fi underground all over the place. And so, yeah, you can do a WhatsApp underground, but you can also get a report underground. You can call anybody underground to surface. And we also deployed BI layers so that we don't have Excel reports or any of these. So now what we get is that the same reason why you don't wait for the bank to send you the monthly report, the same reason why you have a dashboard for your credit card that you know exactly what's going on, the same reason why we want the operations to be transparent and be a replica of what people are doing in their real lives.
Are any of you working in robotics underground and any of that?
I was talking to Chris. We partnered with a company from the US that has AI drones. So basically a drone that thinks by itself. Back in the days, like in the 90s, mining came up with the CMS, a cavity monitoring system called Optech. Actually came out of the Noranda Technology Center and was a breakthrough. However, the signs of the time is that a drone can do that work in 2 minutes. So we partnered with a company called Exyn out of the US, and they know nothing about mining, but they have some sort of technology, and the drone flies itself, scans, and then comes back to where it's supposed to be. So that's an example of robotics we do.
Wow, the drone flies through the mine.
Yes.
That's
and
great.
it avoids people, so there's none of the safety issue because actually it recognizes obstacles. Even obstacles that are moving, the drone is self-scanning and you can tell.
Okay. Any other examples?
Yeah, I got one. At Borden Gold Mine, the electrical mine at the Borden Gold Mine. It's okay now? At the Borden Gold Mine, we implement a solution called AutoMine from Sandvik. And we did that with the Maestro Plexus solution with a lot of success. It worked pretty well, and now between all the shift, we got 2 hours between all the shift, and during the morning and during the night, we use that solution to move the muck underground.
And then also above ground at Barrick, in the Arturo mine, we were able to automate 3 large haul trucks, and with an aftermarket kit. A company out of Brigham City, Utah, called ASI, provide the kit and the software, and then we enhance the backbone, the Wi-Fi through Cisco and Redline to get that backhaul channel back, and they're able to move dirt above ground. So they're giant robots, I guess you could say.
Wow. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, very similar. We're doing autonomous jumbos. We're testing that at the moment underground. But you know, when you take a step back, you look at robotics. It's a much broader topic, I think. It's not just, okay, I want to go and automate, I want something autonomous. We really need to look at how we, again, this is our whole approach at Yamana, is how do we generate value? That's why we do digital, that's why we do innovation. We don't do it for the sake of. And I think that's one of the challenges you get in, one of the hurdles is you get lured in by the technology, right? So I think you really need to keep it very practical, very focused. What is the outcome you're trying to generate? So we're looking at robotics, RPA, robotic process automation. Is that robotics? Well, it's different, right? But these are all things that we're doing to automate, make things safer. And there's, I think, as I said, you always look at the underground piece, etc. But you really look at it from end to end and look at where you can leverage digitization, leverage automation.
Okay, so if you're going to have digitization from the surface all the way down and into the office and information flowing in and out of the mine to the rest of the mining community, what kind of retraining does that take? How much effort is that to retrain people?
If I can tackle that, that was one of the biggest mistakes we made at Barrick was not understanding that, A, the technology stack and how it integrates with existing technology. So if we're bringing in something new, how does it interface technically from the code all the way through the servers? Then also the people. Are they ready to receive it? Do they even want it, right? Most of the, so use, we boiled it down to use, usefulness, and what are they used to? And so everybody hates Oracle, but they're used to it. And when you try to introduce something, they'll reject it even though they hate it. It's a very interesting dynamic there. And so we had to go through and really reevaluate our stakeholder map and how we engaged our stakeholders in a change management process for technology so that they understood what it was supposed to do, providing a communication plan all the way from top to bottom for the people. Then also, so evaluating that person stack, we called it, and understanding how they needed to receive it from an adoption perspective, but then also the technology stack, and will the current ecosystem adopt what we're trying to put in as well? So we really had to cut our teeth with that. We made a lot of missteps, and eventually we're able to take a short end of control system that took a year to develop and implement and scale that then from a 3-month down to a 1 month in process of going through those steps better and better every time.
Anyone else have difficulty integrating the digitization into a well-established traditional industry?
For sure. I think if I can comment on this one, all these new piece of equipment, like I just said, will produce data. It could be underground, could be in HR, could be in everything. And I think in the near future, everyone in every department will need to have some kind of data scientist capability to be able to create value to the business with these data. And if we are not going there, I think we will be flooded by data and we will not be able to create some efficiency with them.
So we have a slightly different approach to training. When you say training, in my head, it basically resonates as a technical training. So do we want to train somebody to know how to run Blue Prism so that they can do their own RPA? Or do we want to train people to do Power BI? When it comes to the cultural changes in innovation and digital, I remember talking to a very colorful GM back when I was a consultant. And he told me, well, Theo, we don't do change management. We change the management. So I actually, when it comes to digital innovation, I'm a big believer of that. And the reason is simple. If you look around, none of us have ever gone through a change management for how to use Amazon and buy stuff online. None of us did change management to use all the devices we're using because it has to be seamless. There's communication. We believe big in communication. Let the people talk. Open forums. Allow people to say that you're full of it. But at least they'll say it so that you can respond. But we don't really, and I'm not a big, when it comes to technology, the use of technology, I don't believe in. I believe that it has to be closely natural to the human for it to be natural. And some of us have young kids. Give them the iPad and you don't need a culture change or change management. They'll figure out what they need to do because it's so close to natural. So our approach is always to be really challenging on the providers so that it's seamless.
Mhm.
That's the way we look at it. But
Yeah.
we small companies, so we may not have the same problems.
Yeah, Chris?
Big
But,
ones.
but we do have that. Sorry, we do have that challenge in terms of an existing workforce. That some of it is aging, 55, 60-year-old. How do you bring digitization to them when it's perhaps not,
Natural.
to Theo's point, natural? Yeah, they didn't grow up with it. So some people, get that and they grasp it and run with it. Some people not. So you have to have this sort of hybrid strategy. We've been talking about data. It just reminded me of an article I read last week, which was talking about adoption of digital-driven companies. The adoption of data to drive decisions. And the article, essentially, the summary was 7% of the challenge is related to technology. That's a given. 93% is exactly as we've been talking about, is change management and how do you drive that adoption. I know, some of the things we're doing. I'm asking some stupid questions, right? In terms of let's get some insights out of this data, and people, why do you want that? Why do you want that? This is a supply chain or whatever it is. And until we change that culture, so we're all embracive and open and transparent, then we can drive to that. So it is very much a culture shift.
You talk about
I'd like to add something about this data. Mining is notorious for data silos. And we created this thing that people use, like, oh, this is data governance, I own the data. We took the position that we work close with Amazon Web Services. So we try to replicate what they have done themselves. And there's a concept of data democracy. So rather than even, we don't waste a lot of time trying to explain to them the need to give data. We just say, we need to have data democracy. And when you say these two words, people actually understand what it means. Mm-hmm. It's not like it's chaos. It's just that we want visibility. So that's another way that we, and it doesn't mean everybody agrees to it, but that's when you change the management.
Question on data democracy. What do you mean by that? Is instead of having, I would say, 500 data silo, to create just a big one?
So we took a simple position on data, is that if you do the hard work of moving all your data to cloud, you're naturally going to create data democracy. So you are accountable for the data, so you have to make sure that the data coming from your side is really good. You have to make sure that you transfer to other people how your calcs are working. But by moving to cloud and having this repository of data, now suddenly I can, or somebody else somewhere else can run a machine learning algorithm on the data without having to go through sending you a requisition, and then you have to show them result first before everybody sees it. Yeah, so that's the position with them.
And there's a lot of personal ownership in data, yes. And a lot of, no, that's my data, and that's why I'm important here at the company, is I make this data. And why do you want it? And what are you going to do with it? Oh, you're going to automate it? That's going to make me obsolete.
Yeah.
And so I think that the data democracy is a great term. We tried to do that same thing, but I think we tried to change too many steps, and we just needed to take some baby steps. We tried to jump all the way into the cloud, and we lost some control and some visibility. The main goal is to try to get that information directly from the machine. Mm-hmm. And that's good, because now we don't have any manipulation. We don't have anything else. We get clean, crisp data from the machine as much as possible. But you've got to really understand, especially in a large organization, that's a difficult challenge. Mm-hmm.
This reminds me of a company that was given a computer, and the computer people said, look, this is the smartest computer in the universe. It can answer any question. It can handle all the data. You can ask it any question you like. It'll know the answer. So somebody got smart, and they said, okay. They asked the computer, is there a God? The computer thought for a nanosecond and said, there is now. So, does it work? Can you give us some, since you've gone digital, can you show improvements? Like what's it done for you?
Yeah, I can give you an example. We, with short interval control, we had an ecosystem of 3 separate things. And to your point of natural, the front end of this had a 160-page manual, and that's not natural. So we had to go back to the vendor and make them have it be a little more intuitive. But once that took place and we were able to hook that data together, first of all, integrate the technology to have a reportable set of data that worked. Then the biggest thing for that is getting the communications plan back to the workforce to understand what they were supposed to do with their new tablet they're going to take underground. And so we just came up with, can we just hit the button here and here, right? To simplify the usage of the tool, the software, and the numbers we needed back. We were able to, through them just knowing that they're being watched, so the Hawthorne effect basically, they were able to increase man hours by 1/2 hour of active shift length. That equated to 400 extra tons a day out of that underground mine. And so that equated, it's quarter ounce dirt, so that equates to about $40 million a year.
Wow.
We were then able to double that as we progressed and were able to get more adoption and usage of the tools underground. And honestly, they were just getting one extra load because they had that more, they were staging better, they weren't waiting in a queue, they knew where they needed to go, they could see the mine map, they could see where a need was, and they would automatically go where the work needed to be done. They're professional miners, they want to work, they don't want to wait in a line, just like we don't want to wait in traffic. So we gave them opportunity to see where they could go and gave them the options, and then just had them start and stop their tasks, simply.
Well,
and that
great.
really saved us a lot of time and money.
Any other examples of where you saw clear benefits from going digital?
I got one. I know we did that a couple of years ago, but we implement the ventilation on demand at Eleanor in Quebec, and by doing that, we were being able to save a couple $1 million per year with propane and cost of the electricity. And yes, that's it for my example.
Yeah, we're using VOD as well in some of our mines, and that's kind of table stakes. You know, these days, I always, when you think about digitalization, I always go back to, like my, I got a smartwatch, right, Fitbit. So when you ask, what's the benefit of going digital? So what's the benefit of me digitizing my workouts? So now I get a graph every day of where I worked out, peak heart rates, calories burnt, blah, blah. So what has that done for me? So okay, I've now got some new targets in terms of the amount of calories I want to burn, blah, 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 and I have the plan to do that. So that's nice. So apply that to the business scenario. It's the same logic. So am I now having a different level of conversation today in the office and in the mines than I was 6 months ago? And the answer is yes, right? We're now getting better insights. It's that transparency of data we were talking about. We're getting better insights, therefore we're able to make more strategic decisions, timely decisions. But you're also asking more questions, right? So it's a cycle, and there's no one leap and we're free. It's a maturity curve, right? But I've definitely noticed that different level of conversation. That it's much deeper conversations. Again, focused at driving value, right?
Yeah, it's actually, that's how we look at it. Because we're not a major company, it's hard, and we don't have many operations, so it's harder for us to actually make a business case of like big returns. However, what we're thinking about is that are we operating as if it's 2019? And it's the conversation, it's the visibility. Yes, we do get savings, like, for people to be more appreciative of their task. So on RPA, for example, we took out so many hours off the people's job. We didn't fire anybody, but it actually allowed the people to have higher assurance of what they're doing. So to us, it's more assurance that what they're saying they're comfortable with, so that we can have the discussions. But yeah, our goal is really reduce the time to do something, reduce the cost if necessary, but focus on health and safety.
Mm-hmm. How has digitization improved worker safety? Do you have any examples of that? Or has it?
The drone for us is the biggest one. I make the joke, hopefully there's lots of mining engineers here, but any mining engineer that worked underground in Canada, it typically tends to be open stope or block caving. Block caving is mostly in the BC. Has never seen the inside of a stope because it's so unsafe to go inside. But we're able to send the drone, and the first time we sent the drone with a camera I was actually excited because that will be the first time I saw inside of a store. And for us, the fact that the drone is going, they're doing it in 2 minutes coming out, and that the survey doesn't have to move closer to it was a big health and safety win. The second one is really on this program that Rick House created in 2015 about taking the lead off the underground mine, which with Wi-Fi allowed us to know exactly where the people are. And the third one, which is more on digital, is we run machine learning on 10 years of data for health and safety. And it came up with insights that we haven't seen before. And we now can have some sort of prediction at a level of 80% of, okay, where's going to be the emission, what time of the day is it that we most likely have incidents, so that we can prevent them. And that's something we've done like just last year.
Wow, that's amazing.
I got another example about, like you just said, Theo, if we got Wi-Fi on the ground, we're able to do some tracking, RFID tracking. So we are able to know who is inside the mine and where. So if something goes wrong, we would be able to know exactly where that person was. But also, if we need to do an exercise to evacuate the mine, we are able to track also all the thing that the guy did, how many time they spent to go inside the refuge, and that kind of stuff. So we are by creating data and value, we would be able to increase the efficiency of the evacuation of the mine.
Kind of the same thing as underground. They have a map now, and if there's an emergency, it will actually show arrows on where to go as they walk. It's part of the application we help deploy there to a refuge chamber to escape. And also on the surface, we had, immediately after we deployed at one of our sites underground, there was an incident, and we could see where everyone was underground, at least at that time, and we're able to radio to them and confirm contact and to direct them without that application. So a couple of those things. But also, another uptick was because of Wi-Fi underground, we were able to deploy teleremote vehicles and still be able to muck remote muckers and drills during a blast, so that we can remove the people out of harm's way during a blast. That usually was a loss of production time. Now we can run autonomously, or at least teleremote under there during that. So we were able to pick up ounces at that time as well and get the people out of harm's way.
That's incredible. For mining companies who have not gone digital yet, how difficult is it to incorporate it? How much time are we talking about here? Are we talking a year integration, 2 years integration?
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think Ethan said it earlier around how he got quicker and quicker as he deployed, right? And it's all around change management. I mean, it's unsexy. The technology is the sexy stuff, but that's almost the easy stuff, right? It's proven technology. You can deploy it. Are people going to use it? Are they going to embrace it, right? That's the key thing.
And to create a culture in the company by using data to optimize the operation, it will take time, and that thing can take 10 years, 5 years, 2 years. We will always work in that way to go further.
To me, so what we did is we had what they call a strategic view of what digital should achieve. But then we also went to site and asked the site, what does it mean to you guys? What is it? What's the pain point? What is the thing that if we do, you're going to actually believe we're going digital? And then we try to pair the two and try to create quick wins of, okay, well, this doesn't take time, and then they can see it, or this is too long, it's going to be a project. I think that contrary to what most executives believe, I think the workforce, there are people in the workforce that want to see digital because they know that in their real life they have a different lifestyle, and they don't understand why we don't do the same. So to me, it's more of, okay, can you have a conversation? Some companies in the U.S., in oil and gas, for example, actually created a platform that looks like it's Facebook Workplace, but it looks like a social media but internal, where people just send ideas of, okay, if we did this, then I'll believe we're digital, or how come we're still doing this? So there's this communication thing where you need to really ask your workforce and not basically think that, oh yeah, no, my workforce is this age they're not going to do it. At DPM, we haven't been able to trace the adoption of digital to anybody's age. Yes, we can't. There's people that are young don't want to do it, or people that are young don't want to do it, and vice versa. So it's like, okay, well, I don't know.
And we were able to do some surveys before and after in the autonomy program where it was interesting because the older workforce wanted the autonomy. And there wasn't a fear for them replacing jobs. They just knew that it was a better way. They had the experience. The younger guys were the ones that are afraid of losing their job. It was a very interesting. We thought we thought it'd be opposite.
Wow.
So then we did a survey afterwards, and there was a better perception of it now that they understood it, and our communication plan then developed better. And so we could then target the concerns. We understood the concerns, and we could go and then say, okay, this is actually what this is intended for. It's not to replace a job. So we were able to sculpt through surveys our communication plan back, and then understanding what they needed to know to adopt it faster. And so for me, anytime something that the vendor brings to the table, that can be digitization. There's going to be constant iterations. And if you think, when we started it, we had a hackathon basically that came in and said, okay, what technical limits? And, you know, everything's lasers, right? At the end of the day, it's all lasers. Or levitation, or whatever you want to call it. Now, let's back up a step. How can our current technical limits to get 10 feet underground is 7 hours. Okay, if we had everything lined up and the best operators with the best equipment, it's 7 hours to get 10 feet underground. What do we do to shrink that? So we had to understand that white space in between the activities and really optimize our variance to plan. But that's still going to iterate as more technology, just like we see around here. Who's pushing that and bringing that in, and then having it integrated into your existing ecosystem. And so you're constantly bringing in new pieces and taking out old pieces. But at some point, you got to achieve a consistency of digitization where you have your core ecosystem that's stable, and you work with your partner vendors to bring that tech stack up to a laser levitation level.
Okay, so we've heard some remarkable technology. We got drones flying through stopes. We've got telerobotics. We've got autonomous machines. We've got safety procedures where the workers have tablets, tracking, data management of the whole thing. So what's next? What's coming? What's on the pipe, coming down the pipe for the future for digitization?
Chris?
That's an interesting question, right? Loaded, some might say. There's obviously going to be step improvements in terms of what we have out there today, but you know, if I think of it from another way, so what's going to drive change in the industry? And I go back to what we're looking at, some of the things we're looking at Yamana. We're looking at, you know, how do we mine without cyanide or leach without cyanide, for example? How do we lessen our footprint on the environment? So I think that's where a lot of the drive is going to be from. And our social license, our license to operate is absolutely critical, and we have to maintain that. So I think, in order for us to do that, you know, we use less water, you know, diesel footprint, called the carbon footprint, cyanide and other chemicals. We have to look at getting better at doing that and partnering with the communities to do so. So to me, that's either going to get legislated onto us, or we're going to have to change, or both. Right? Mm-hmm.
So glad you mentioned that. So glad you mentioned that. So before we go, do we have any questions from the audience? Shannon has a microphone, so we can hear you. Does anyone want to ask a question of the panel?
We got time.
One right here. Shannon, if you don't mind identifying yourself.
Yeah, I'm Alistair Ross, just left the valet operations. I'm interested to know, in your efforts to digitize all the data, how you overcome our history of lying. So we're very good at saying how many bags of shotcrete we shot, but we never bought that many bags to go down the mine. How many bolts got put in, and when we count, it's not the same. And it's all tied to bonus systems and incenting the workers, and I'm just wondering if you've got any experience.
One of the first days we went underground to evaluate the technology and go through the numbers, we were going through the numbers with a GM at an unnamed site. and And he said, I don't like that number. Change that number. And the new tech was like, but that's the number. He's like, I don't like that number. What do you want it to be? Oh, I want it to be this. Because he had a reporting meeting tomorrow, right? He knew he would make it up, and he did. But right then, he didn't want it to look like that because he was going to get his butt chewed, right? And so I think that it starts with the top. It starts with your top GM, superintendent, and understanding that people, and they need to be able to fail to a certain extent. Obviously, it's production. We all know that. But let's make it accurate and understand the game plan. If you have more data, then you can mitigate that faster. And if you have it real from the machine and everybody understands it's from the machine, there's no way it can be misinterpreted, right? And so I think that that's the future, is getting it straight from the horse's mouth or the HMI.
For us, we do the same. We try to eliminate any manual input processes as much as possible by buying new sensors and getting the data flowing directly into some sort of a cloud locally. But the other thing we do is, because we decided to go to cloud so that we can do big data analytics. And it also will drive the data demographics, like I said. But the real reason is that we wanted to run a lot of intelligent assessment or interpretation of what we've done so far. So with AI, or subset, the machine learning piece, it's actually able to tell you that there's no way this data makes sense. So for health and safety, for example, we know very well that this is one of the places that, you know, all the industry says we care about, but it's also one of the places where if an LTI shows up, there's a big debate on whether or not it's an LTI, and then it goes one way or the other. So we run machine learning on data since 2010 for one of our smelters, and well, for our smelter, we only have one, and it was able to figure out, because that was before we owned it. So there's like data on Excel, data on manual, there's data coming from like automated sensors, but it was able to figure out from all of these ones, which one do we just discard because it didn't make sense. I don't say it's going to be like that all the time. In every system, if you want to corrupt it, you can always corrupt it, but that's our approach so far.
Any other questions? Don't be shy. Okay, I have another one. Oh, over here. Yes, sir.
Data security was the question. What about data security? You know, there was a hack years ago that somebody was able to operate remotely some ventilation fans. That's a big concern. That's more on the business side of the firewall business, understanding that outside intrusion. What kept me up as an IT manager was that very thing, is somebody messing with the ventilation underground. That's people's lives, right? As we become more remote, AI or robotic, those things are very, very possible. And so that's top of mind, and I think that there are ways to secure it and segment it to make sure that you have that. I know that in large, at least in my experience, once you get into certain platforms, you're all the way in. Mm-hmm. And so segmenting those things and really making sure you have that authentication set up front, because it's people that's going to get in there. Machines aren't going to do that necessarily. But you have to be able to make sure that it's tested well up front, and that you have that capability to respond quickly, because it's going to happen. It's not you can prevent it all, but how are you resilient to that security breach is often more important than preventing.
I think also, if I can comment on this one, it's really important to have a segmentation between informational technology and operating technology. So you will isolate both, and usually on the informational technology area, it's easier to get there from internet, but when you go deeper on the on the OT side of the business, it's a lot more complex, and you need to get more authorization, and you need the jump server and that kind of stuff with certificates, so it's a lot more harder to get there.
We have a cybersecurity program that we put in early on because of the Wi-Fi we had in Bulgaria. And basically, that program has visibility from the board, and it actually helps us stay really relevant. We use mainstream suppliers. I'm not going to name them yet, so that the same guys that will be doing work for the government, will be doing work for us. Actually, when it comes to digital, that's our approach. It's mainstream. Mom and pop type digital services I tend to stay away from unless they have like a real use case. We try to go mainstream. Whoever is making sure they're protecting the data from Rogers, that's the guy I want to protect the data from the mine. I don't need any subset of it or whatever. So cybersecurity protection is critical for us, especially that we don't really operate in Canada, so we need to make sure that the board is confident in this.
In a similar way, from our perspective, we use we've merged IT/OT in terms of approach, and controls. Microsegmentation is what we have in place. But to Ethan's point, you have to assume you will be penetrated at some point. So how do you react to that? How do you minimize? Sorry, how do you minimize the impact, right? And obviously, you want to try and make it as secure as possible, but you also want to have your plans in place on how do you react, how do you then limit any damage.
Yep.
I got a question back here.
Hello, JP Chason with Cementation, and so we do a lot of design in our company. I had a question for you about BIM, which is Building Information Management, or maybe it means something else to other people, but are we, and what we've seen in recent RFQs and so forth is a requirement to use BIM in an underground mine environment, which is, I guess, somewhat, someone asked earlier, what's next or something like that. So I think that's kind of what's next, which is going all the way. In other words, everything is Internet of Things. Is that where it's going?
Yeah, I think so. As you go through digitization, you're going to identify another bottleneck. And as you sense your bottlenecks better, meaning you're going to have more sensors built around those bottlenecks, if it's haulage, if it's stockpiles, if it's whatever's next. From a variance to plan optimization, those tasks become, right now, we were focused on haulage, mucking, drill, blast, muck, haul, right? That was it for a short interval control. Well, what about the pump mover? What about the site services that are required as well? So like CommitWorks and Fusion, they have a product that can incorporate more of the site services into that overall plan. And then we have fleet management systems, but we don't have a we don't have a management system above ground for making a new road into the pit, vice versa, and then having that heading supplied or whatever they needed. And so I think that will become more and more. So that Internet of Things, sensing the new bottleneck, understanding what the problem is. Because, yeah, we can bring 500 tons to surface, but can we process that now? Now we're going to work at processing and understanding our bottlenecks there. So it's just going to move down the line until we can, and it'll just start over again.
We have a question here.
Good morning.
Hold it really close.
Oh, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So one of the things I noticed, by the way, I'm with Hatch Mining Engineering Group. One of the things I noticed with a lot of mining companies is that with their innovation groups, they tend to be very exposed to the cyclical nature of the industry. So when things are going well, or things are pretty stable, innovation efforts tend to ramp up quite a bit. And then when things get a little rocky, that's when there's a lot of turnover, a lot of talent is lost, a lot of products get cut. So let me ask you guys, where do you guys draw the line and how do you guys make a decision on what to outsource to other companies when it comes to digital products and services? Or how do you make that decision to build things internally or to outsource it?
If I can, I'll answer that, because we went through that very same thing. Is if you look at the bell curve, for me, try to get off the shelf. Okay, just like you said, you're going to work with the leaders of the industry and somebody that can work with you to configure, not custom, right? configurable is the key word. Is your product configurable? If you have to customize it, that's going to take time out of that vendor, or you got to hire that. Now, there are companies like myself that we will augment your implementation and adoption staff, so you don't have to hire those people, whether you're a software company or a mine, whatever. We're agnostic to that. But you want to ramp up either from the vendor side to get that implementation and change management piece in there. I think that's the biggest win there, is getting that change management set up front, understanding who's going to be your drivers, I call them mafia bosses underground, who is the center of influence. It might not be the manager. It might be Joe, who everybody looks to. He's the grumbler that, oh, this isn't going to work, and he's got this. So we try to identify that up front, shrink and ramp up that staff to augment either the vendor or the mine to get that in, and then they can go back to normal operating staff at that time. We went the custom route. We tried to code our own stuff. Some of it worked, but there's a lot that we could have done off the market. I think 100% off the market, and it was a little more expensive up front, but it would have saved us more over time. Now we don't have to retain developers, the staff to do that. We can resource that rather than actually hold it. So.
Nicholas, I agree with Ethan. We're very much off the shelf for the same reasons. We're not a development shop. We want to configure, and we don't want to own that going forward, right? But you raised another question in your question, which was around the cyclical nature of mining, and what is the mine of the future going to look like versus, innovation today? How do we sustain it? So I guess the answer is it depends on the price of gold. However, to answer your implied question around how do we sustain it, I think there's a couple of things. One is, are we organizationally set up to actually sustain? I don't know what I'm doing wrong here.
Sitting on the edge. Turn your head towards me, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to face this way. Are we organizationally set up? Do we reward our people correctly in terms of innovation? Or, we're just going to, the market's down, we're just going to cut. So I think we have to separate innovation. It shouldn't be part of ops, or it shouldn't be part of export, whatever it is, right? It should be a standalone with a standalone budget. And also, we need to get ownership. So it's not, once a capability is proven, we really should look at getting ownership from the business, right? And they should own it in terms of the pull rather than a push.
Yep.
So, two very simple comments.
Agree.
Thank you, guys.
Any other questions? I have one that's related to, we were talking about data security. What about fail-safe within the systems itself to make sure that miners are not going to suddenly find their system has crashed on that autonomous drilling machine or whatever? Like, what safety systems do you put in to make sure it's secure that way?
Well, I think that as you digitize, they're going to become reliant on the tool, and they're going to let go of the leaky feeder, right? That leaky feeder. It's been there forever. Either how do we innovate that leaky feeder, upgrade it, but how do we get rid of it? But they're going to be dependent on that. They're still dependent on radio. And so to have those fail-safes is part of a communication plan, and then either you have to be able to design that up front and understand and test that. That's a presentation with NORCAP before. It's being able to understand what happens, what if, then, right? So this happens, now what? And so we went through with some of those things to how do we, if this system crashes, how do we get the data? Because now we're relying on that. We've ripped out the old system. We ripped out an old system too soon at one point. That was a bad mistake because now, even though that system was terrible, they still used it and they relied on that data. And they at that time ripped that system out before they validated that new system was going to provide the data that the old one did. So we have to make sure that we have that ecosystem staged and tested properly. You have to have it just like a code repo. You have development, you have test, you have production. And you've got to be able to do that with any system, hardware or software or peopleware, all the way through. So you have to test the people as well in the situation to react.
That's great.
But also we need to keep in mind every system can crash, even the leaky feeder communication network. So I think we need to keep in mind the old-fashioned way of how we will evacuate the mine if we don't have any communication, if we don't have any tracking system. So it's important to keep both for a certain period of time. Yeah.
Okay.
We have a backup, basically disaster recovery and business system backup for every major technology process or system that we put in place. And the reason is that things will crash. You just need to know what you can do when they crash. Yeah. And so for us, it's critical to just make sure that the employees are confident that, okay, if it crashes, what are we going to do? I mean, we know, like, not long ago, was it like one of the airports in the UK, the system crashed. Systems will crash. They'll crash even more often as we go digital. But that's the nature of life as where we're going. That's what it is.
Okay, well, we're out of time, but I'd like to thank our panel, Ethan Hall, Michel Samovojski, and Theo Yameogo and Chris Burgess for being with us today. And thank you all for coming here today. We will be around. Thank you very much.
Big round of applause. Let's go. Thank you very much, guys.